Live from the SABC's Auckland Park headquarters, welcome to this week's last edition of The Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvogo, and on the show this evening,
I am so thankful, I'm elated, and thank God for, sustaining me. And yes, I'm very much excited. We are excited with the legal team that finally there is justice to this matter.
Suspended Public Protector Busiwe Mkhwebane wins big. We look at the implications of today's High Court ruling. We also look at a looming security industry strike that could put so much at risk, not to mention the potential to seriously jeopardize the country's already ailing economy. We'll speak to some of the key industry players. We end the show by examining President Cyril Ramaphosa's tough, frank talk to the country's mayors. The Watchdog starts now. We begin, of course, with that big win. The Western Cape High Court ruling in favor of suspended Public Protector Busiwe Mkhwebane. Here's how she reacted to the news.
I think let's read the judgment and be sure that it's fine. And even if there is an appeal, there are processes which are followed for that. My legal team as well will deal with that accordingly, because there are provisions which also deal with how this matter can be dealt with whilst the appeal is being had, whilst I'm still continuing to serve the public, because that's my interest. That's all what I'm interested in. Tomorrow I'm going to the office. The hearing is proceeding. I'll be in the office whilst as well getting updates on all these particular issues.
The Public Protector Busiwe Mkhwebane responding to that court ruling by the Western Cape High Court, which declared President Cyril Ramaphosa's suspension invalid. Here's how the presidency has responded. A short while ago, they issued a statement. Listen to what presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya had to say a few minutes ago.
Noted the ruling handed down by the Western Cape High Court, stating that the president's decision to suspend Advocate Mkhwebane
with that bite, we will hopefully sort out the problem and, of course, tell you what the presidency had to say in response to that declaration by the Western Cape High Court, saying that her suspension by the president is, in fact, invalid. But, of course, I mean, we do have on the line Mpumelelo Zikalala, who is a legal expert from Zikalala Attorneys. Mpumi, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. According to Section 172.2 of the Constitution, an order of constitutional invalidity against the president has no force unless it is confirmed by the Constitutional Court.
Yes, you're quite correct. It's very clear in terms of saying we're going to identify three things. It is an act of parliament, a provincial act, and the conduct of the president, specific to the president. So if you then have a matter in which the conduct of the president is becoming or is in direct contravention of the Constitution, in this case, I would guess just administrative action is per Section 33. That means that particular determination by the Western Cape High Court has to be confirmed further by the Constitutional Court. However, the court does not give, or the Constitution does not give, that particular ultimatum. There are short-term interventions of saying, while you are waiting for the court to fully confirm or dismiss that particular application, you can have interim relief, you can have interdicts in which both parties can then go and apply for at the end of the day. So the office or the public protector is well within her rights in terms of saying, I'm going to go to court and say the odds are in my favor, or the court has ruled in my favor. I have a judgment which is positively in my favor. Please protect it by granting me this particular interim relief. If we do that, let's go and, or the president must then show where the harm is going to be or the prejudice is going to be, especially with the backing of a positively looking judgment at the end of the day. So you are quite correct. The Court will be the final decision maker in this particular process in terms of confirming whether the Western Cape High Court decision was indeed correct.
So, I mean, she was saying, speaking on our sister show earlier, that she's actually going to the office tomorrow, which suggests to me that she'll probably go and go back to work even before she actually approaches the court.
I think that will depend on how she views and accepts this particular judgment. And the legal avenues would be there for either of the parties who then feel aggrieved. The court is very clear in terms of taking the court into your own hands. It simply says, go back to court and confirm whatever that you need to do or whatever contravention that you allege would have taken place. So in this instance, if she decides to go to work tomorrow, it's well within her rights, but it's also within the rights of the president and also the Office of the Public Protector to then say, can you, Western Cape High Court, give us a declaration or some sort of a clear answer as to what is the next process that must be followed or ought to be followed in these particular instances, as we do not want to find ourselves in contravention of any of the laws which are applicable within the land. So we need you to come on board to clarify this type of things. However, I would say on both parties, cool heads would need to prevail. But if there are any instances of confusion, go back to court and seek a statement or an order in which is going to say, please clarify what you're really dealing with here. Or the parties can sit together and have come to some sort of a settlement at the end of the day and come to a mutual decision of how they're going to proceed from now on.
Mm-hmm. Well, the presidency statement is rather terse. It says the presidency has noted the ruling handed down by the Western Cape High Court this afternoon, stating that President Cyril Ramaphosa's decision to suspend Advocate Busiwe Mkhwebane is invalid. The presidency will seek guidance from the Constitution on the next steps. End of the statement.
I think they were playing it very safe in terms of saying we are sending hints of saying that we are reading the section 172, in particular the one that says that unless unconfirmed by the Constitutional Court, and only then will we make our next move. However, we do not want to pronounce and make any such decisions or even disclose what our next move is going to be. We'll wait and see if anything happens that would necessitate the president to go to court. Probably they will do that on an urgent basis. And the court will probably entertain this particular matter or the agency in this particular matter and say, we are going to hear you, because at the end of the day, we want finality to prevail. I must state, this particular section is maybe a bit confusing to certain individuals in the manner in which it has been drafted. But from the face of it and what we can read, it simply says, yes, a decision of invalidity can be taken on the conduct of the president, but that particular decision has to be confirmed by the court. And then it goes further, providing interim relief and also actions that have to be followed by either of the parties to expedite the particular process.
Mm-hmm. But of course, I mean, it is a big win for her, considering, I mean, everything that has happened and that continues to happen. I mean, we still have the impeachment proceedings in Parliament. Mpumelelo Zikalala, let me thank you for your time this evening. He is from Zikalala Attorneys. We will see, of course, how this pans out in Parliament. Meanwhile, the hearing of the impeachment of suspended Public Protector Advocate Busiwe Mkhwebane was today characterized by disagreements between the evidence leader, Nazarene Bauer, and her legal representative, Dali Mpofu. The bone of contention was whether the evidence leader was cross-examining the witness on the stand, as Mpofu argued, while Bauer disagreed. During the proceedings, Mpofu also requested a 5-minute adjournment after, of course, hearing of that High Court decision we've just spoken about with Mpumelelo Zikalala.
Sorry, Sorry,
You have a
Advocate
right to
Mpofu.
speak, but through the
Advocate
secretary,
Mpofu.
Advocate Mpofu. Don't
You too.
disrespect
Advocate
this
Mpofu.
inquiry.
You too.
Don't disrespect this inquiry.
Just mute
Don't
Advocate Mpofu,
disrespect
please.
us. We have been patient with you. You are disrespecting us. You are testing our patience.
Thank you,
Don't do
Honorable
that.
Ngola.
Don't do that.
Thank you, Honorable Ngola. Advocate Bauer, please. Advocate Bauer. Advocate Bauer, I want you to continue with the witness.
The inquiry's evidence leader, Advocate Bauer, was questioning the head of legal at the Public Protector's Office, Montu Sithole, about the legal fees spent fighting Mkhwebane's impeachment inquiry. Sithole expressed concerns, saying he was questioned about documents that he didn't have.
I was asked to answer questions on documents that are not in possession of the evidence leaders, that are not flighted on the screen. And based on my comments, there's a comment or suggestion to the effect that I'm not giving truthful answer. Chair, that is a very worrying concern for me.
Mkhwebane's counsel, Advocate Mpofu, objected, saying Bauer was cross-examining the witness and she is not allowed to do that.
I'm just disappointed that those who should know better are abusing the rules. Thank you.
However, Bauer disagreed that she was cross-examining the witness.
The witness has absolutely wonderful recollection of certain events in 2019 and in the context of which Mr. Mkhwebane, and this is what I will put at the end of the matter, it's not for the witness to answer whether consultants were or were not engaged. It's for the public protector to put that before the committee. All I did was ask the witness about his knowledge of that event. It's not based on whether there's documentation or not. The documentation that was put up is the documentation that the witness provided to us, or which we got out of the public protector's office in the first instance.
In another development, Mpofu has told the inquiry that the Western Cape High Court has set aside Mkhwebane's suspension. Mkhwebane was suspended by President Cyril Ramaphosa in June this year, pending the finalization of her fitness to hold office.
We've just received a judgment from the Western Cape High Court that the suspension of the public protector has been set aside. So we just wanted to deal with that logistically.
The parliamentary inquiry into Mkhwebane's fitness to hold office continued after the adjournment. Lula Mamatya, SABC News, Parliament.
Opposition parties, meanwhile, marched to the office of the Public Protector today. They are demanding that the acting Public Protector, Advocate Galega, release a report into the investigation of President Cyril Ramaphosa. She, of course, received the memorandum and promised to respond within a week to the demands of the opposition parties that she release a report into the investigation sooner rather than later.
Do the right thing for the Republic of South Africa. Release the report. We are here. We will make sure if they do not release the report, we will seek legal remedy. Amandla!
United under one umbrella, opposition parties in Parliament gave the acting Public Protector 7 days to respond to their demand for the release of the report into the Phala Phala saga. A sea of people accompanied the opposition parties to demand accountability for the saga, which implicates President Cyril Ramaphosa. The opposition stated that the Executive Members' Ethics Act compelled the Public Protector to release the report within 30 days.
The Executive Members' Ethics Act stop protecting Ramaphosa and start protecting the people of South Africa.
The said parties also charged that by allegedly concealing the crime at the Phala Phala farm, the president allegedly breached his oath of office.
As the ACDP, we are unapologetic. We believe that when a president of a country who believes in a constitutional democracy supposedly takes an oath of office and puts his hand on the Bible and swears to the nation that he will uphold the Constitution, says to the nation that he will be honest, says to the nation that he will be a man of integrity.
The EFF argued that the release of the report would allow Parliament to do its work.
Release the report. Parliament is busy there, trying to make sure that Ramaphosa is held accountable. Your report will be more effective to help us to hold him more accountable in Parliament.
COPE, however, encouraged supporters at the march to do away with the governing party.
You people must rise and fight wherever you see ANC, wherever you see their colors. You must say, away with ANC, away.
Tsalega received the memorandum.
This office needs to do its work independently, without any fear, without any favor, and without any prejudice, to ensure that we produce credible reports which will stand the test of the legal process. As you are well aware, most of our reports end up in court. It is therefore important for us to ensure that we investigate diligently and we apply our minds so that in line with our act, when we produce the report upon its completion, it is a report that is implementable.
Kani Mapanga, SABC News, Pretoria.
Up next, we'll look at the looming security industry strike. Your security may soon be compromised. A deadlock in wage negotiations between unions and private security companies has set the stage for a nationwide strike that could begin later this month. Workers are demanding a wage increase of 16% or 900 rands across the board. My guests are Lebu Nare, the Deputy President of the Association of Private Security Owners of South Africa, TAPSOSA. Jack Mazibuko is the General Secretary of the South African Transport and Allied Workers Union, SATAU, a COSATU affiliate. Praisewell Nsibande is the National Organizer of the SAFTU-affiliated Democratized Transport Logistics and Allied Workers Union, DETAU. Good evening to all of you. Thank you very much for your time. I'm going to start with you, Jack, if I may. You have been meeting with the employers. How would you characterize the negotiations up until this point?
No, thank you very much, Rio, and thank you for having Satao on your show. It is true that since from April we have embarked into a long marathon of wage negotiations with the employers in the security industry. This process has took longer than we expected because during the negotiations the employers were adamant that they are not going to succumb to the workers' demand, which was 16% across the board over the period of 3 years. We negotiated to a point where after we did not reach consensus, we ended up approaching the commissioner, whom we requested him to facilitate to try to find a solution between the two parties. And unfortunately, during that time, we could not reach consensus once more. And the commissioner was left with no option but to issue the certificate for the unions within the council to embark on a national strike. We have agreed with the employer that we need to agree on the rules of picketing, which we are supposed to submit them on the 1st of September. And then on our submission of the picketing rules, the employer came back to the table and said they are willing to engage with the union and they have given us a revised offer, which we are supposed to revert back to them by the 11th of September. Now, what we have done on our side, we have started a process where we are engaging with our members to test their acceptance of the new offer tabled by the employer on the table. So we are still embarking in that particular process. We have started at Western Cape. We have started in Gauteng, and Western Cape, and then KZN, and we're going to move to all other provinces. What we are doing there is to table the revised offer from the employer.
Okay.
We must indicate that as a union, particularly SATAU, we welcome the decision of the employer to come back to the table and propose this revised offer, and we are hoping that after we consulted with our members, we'll be able to give a positive response to the new offer that has been put on the table.
Praisewell, give us a bit of background to this particular demand of 16% or 900 rands, because to a person who may be listening, saying 16%, I mean, inflation is hovering around 6%. So why would your members be demanding 16%? Perhaps level with us on how you've arrived at 16%, and perhaps talk to us about how much, on average, a security guard earns these days.
Thanks very much, Leo, and the listeners for inviting us here on behalf of the town. I think, first of all, before I can answer your question, it's very important to make this statement so that the nation can understand. The security guards have been so undermined for the longest time in this industry. Hence, these security guards are the ones who are in line of the safety of each and every South Africans. For an example, you'll find security guards in the companies, in residential areas, in towns, in offices. And these security guards are the one and the only who are mostly exposed to any danger as and when the criminals attack or come to rob that particular business or area. But what is so very surprising is that they are the one also who has been so less paid like any other sector, and they are working so very long hours. To come back to your question in terms of 16%, this 16% comes from the background in terms of how the security guards are earning. You look at the security guards, the lowest earner, they are at about 5,000 rand with 200 some cents. These people, they are working the longest hours each and every day, 7 days a week. So if you look at this 16% and then you break it down, my mathematics tells me to say 16% is just 16 rand each and every 100 rand that is earned by the employee. So in a normal society and in a normal environment, you can't, when you are in business, you can just come and say 16% is a lot of money. Because this security guard also, it's 16%, I mean, it's influenced by the fact that these security guards, they don't have that much benefit like any other sectors, as I've mentioned in the beginning. So for us, we believe that the 16% actually is just sufficient because these security guards, they've been exposed even, if you can recall, on the COVID. They were the ones who had been remaining on the line of duty, protecting these businesses. But at the end of the day, there was nothing that has been given to the security guards, even in a form of to say, thank you, we appreciate what we are doing. And further than that, the approach from the employer side is so very disappointing, where they want to extend the multi-year agreement that we used to have to say, let us have a 4-year agreement in the form of a 3.5%, and also to say other demands that we want in the form of, for an example, the Provident Fund, the status quo must remain the same. Because we believe as the town that this issue of the Provident Fund is the key and the important benefit from the employees, because this is the only benefit that they are having. So we cannot compromise in the fact that the employers, if they are saying the status quo must remain more or less in 5% the employees and the 5% employee. So we believe that it's too little that for the employer to contribute, because we call this benefit as an investment. Thank you.
All right, Lebonare, as employers, what are your issues?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mvoko. Good evening to your viewership. Well, our biggest concern with the labor is that the unions which had been deployed, the employer unions which had been deployed to negotiate with the employee unions, themselves are not an actual representation of the constitution of the industry. I mean, you have about 5 unions which represent less than 23% of the actual labor representation in the sector, making demands and negotiating with these prospective employers who don't even represent the majority of the unions. The reason why we have this deadlock and we have this alarm of a situation where we might wake up in the morning and not have security services in the entire country is solely at the blame of the companies who are party to the bargaining council. As TAPSOSA, we have challenged the extension of the collective agreement. We are not party to the negotiations and we're not party to the negotiations. So I think it's for the unions to then tell us as to how the negotiations are going, because there is certain information that we have had and we would like the unions to be forthcoming and give the security workers and their constituents the actual news and the actual progress report that they have with the negotiations with the employers. Because in fact, on one side, you have a group claiming to say they want 16%. And what we are realizing is that they are crying wolf. And in actual fact, we have it on good authority that they've already agreed on an increase of about 7.5% for year 1, 7% for year 2, and 6% for year 3, far below the far cry that they are claiming to say that they are demanding the 16%. So I think Labour must come to the table and must be honest to its constituents and must be honest to members so that we do not have a situation that creates instability in the economy.
Well, I'd like to ask you first, Mr. Nare, whether you at least agree with the unions on one thing, that currently, as things stand and historically, security guards are being underpaid and undermined. Do you disagree with them on that?
No, I definitely agree. We sympathize with our workers. I mean, the majority of the security personnel that are operating in the private industry are majority black and are majority women, surprisingly, who have multiple beneficiaries, as far as 5 or 6. I mean, the current living conditions obviously dictate that there should be a salary adjustment within a reasonable figure.
What would be a reasonable figure for you?
Look, we are not sitting in the negotiations. I think the 16% that they would have demanded is a bit excessive, considering if you consider that the majority of the end users are government departments who are using private security services. Now, you have to then think, where is the money for this 16% going to come from? Government.
But isn't that because of a very low base?
Well, it's because the classification of security services, which my colleague has rightfully said, has not actually received the necessary attention that it does. I think we need to start standardizing the rates that employers source and source security services, and therefore the payment of security workers must also be revised as well. I think if you standardize it, similar to all other professions where you have a standardized rate where a person cannot charge 500 Rand for a security guard and you have company C charging 200 Rand, I think the moment you standardize that, you then create a conducive environment where you would have a very stabilized industry that is going to be susceptible to negotiations with reasonable figures.
Mm-hmm. A quick one before I go back to your fellow panelists. Why are you, as TAPSOSA, not part of the negotiations?
Well, we're not part of the negotiations because we have an issue with the current constitution of the bargaining council. Now, you have a group of companies who then went and misrepresented themselves and their standing in the industry and claim to represent more than 50% plus one of the employers. And that particular group of employers then colluded with certain unions which they had closed shop agreements with. And it's the same unions and the same employers who then after agreeing to forming a bargaining council, which is a good thing because the industry obviously does need a bargaining council mechanism. After they then formed this particular union, they then proceeded to exempt the same workers, the same employer organizations from paying your 7.5% provident fund contributions that the unions now are now saying it's the only benefit that the workers get. So you can see already we have an issue where a group of or a cabal of prospective employers and their close shop union bodies then form this bargaining council. They then have disagreements amongst themselves, and we must bear the brunt of their consequences. You know, it is quite perplexing to say the least.
Jack, do you have issues with the composition of the bargaining council?
No, thank you very much. Well, let me clarify and try to educate my fellow panelists there. Look, to start with, a bargaining council is a legally registered a bargaining council that constitutes with the employers and the unions within the industry. And once the Department of Labor is satisfied that both the employers and the unions in the industry do represent majority of the security employees and security employers in the industry, then the council gets registered. Now, as soon as it's registered, it's legally binding. So we don't have a problem with that. And we know, if my memory serves me well, your guests there, they are the one of the association who are trying to oppose the establishment of the bargaining council. And I can tell you, we know for a fact that one of the reasons why they were trying to oppose the establishment of the bargaining council is because for a very long time, they have benefited by exploiting poor security workers when the regulation was within the Department of Labor. Because you recall, before we have a bargaining council, we used to have a central determination. They take an advantage of the fact that the Department of Labor is unable to monitor each and every employer. And they used to underpay their security officers. Now that we have a bargaining council, they are worried that we are going to strengthen our inspection. We are going to intensify our enforcement. And that is why they have a problem with this thing. But they have tried that thing, they failed. But let's come to the issue here. I'm listening attentively, and then I can tell you that the employer that is claiming to have an interest of a security officer is busy contradicting himself in this way. The question that you asked is that, does he have a problem with the demand presented by the union? And he said those demands are too excessive. But let's look at the work that the security guards are doing. The security guards are doing the work the same way the police, the SNDF are operating. Because these are the first line of defense, protecting the buildings, the properties that worth billions and billions of rand. But when they have to be paid, they are being underpaid. The employers choose not to comply with any form of legislation. So that is why, as unions in the council, we said enough is enough. We are demanding a 16%. We are also demanding a better condition of employment for all these security companies. I fully agree with my fellow colleague there, when they say the security guards are doing a very, very good job. If you remember, during the lockdown, the security guards were in the front line, defending and protecting the properties, irrespective of the country was on lockdown. So, as unions, we are saying we are starting here. We are going to continue to demand a reasonable wages for security guards from now up until we are happy that the security guards are being taken serious in the country.
Praisewell, I mean, from your vantage point, do you think the way the bargaining council is constituted is proper and representative of the industry?
Yeah, I think that the bargaining council is proper, but each and every institute has its own weaknesses, even though I cannot go into details, because always it's been a case in any bargaining council. You can go to road freight, you can go to the rail, you can mention to the public sector and so forth. There are issues that are always been raised either by the employer or the labor itself. So for us, we don't have a problem necessarily about the bargaining council. We believe that the bargaining council is right because we've been fighting for this bargaining council for some years to be established for the sake of what Mr. Mazibuko has been indicated in terms of this expectation and the non-compliance from the employer side.
So, Lebo, I mean, how are you? I mean, you say that you know this council is not a representative, but of course, I mean the union leaders who are part of this panel disagree with you. The question then is, you and your members, what are you going to do? How are you going to deal with these issues being outside of this formal setup, which they say is actually not perfect, but actually does work, or at least has begun or has started to work?
Well, we do not oppose, and we want to put it on record, we do not oppose the necessity of a bargaining mechanisms in the bargaining council mechanism in the sector. It is something that we welcome. It is something that we really hoped that would actually steer the industry in a positive direction. But the issue currently is true. To say, if our colleagues here are going to be honest with everyone, they could give you the figures. To say the unions, they could give you the names of the unions, and they could actually give you the numbers. I mean, the private security sector outnumbers the police and the military combined 3-1. Are you saying 5 unions or 14 unions represent the entire 50% plus 1? It's impossible. I mean, if the employers as well, if you think of it, of the employers, there's about maybe 28 employers who are party to the bargaining council. What we have then done to our members is to say we have challenged the extension of the collective agreement to non-parties, which is a matter that is still before court. I think we should allow the court process to run its own course and not comment much on the legal process that is currently underway.
But surely, I mean, let's just say, I mean, it's a fact that they represent 23 or so % of the entire workforce, but that's no reason to exploit the workers. That's no reason to underpay them. Shouldn't you be looking at the facts before you, that as you have accepted, these people deserve better, and that's what you should be looking at instead of pointing out over and over again that they represent a much smaller pool of the security guards workforce?
No, definitely. I think the exploitation is the biggest concern, and having a bargaining council mechanism does assist in that regard to monitor certain employers who are non-compliant. Definitely, we agree that the members, even our own, who are then identified to be non-compliant in terms of the basic minimum wage, should face the wrath of the labor unions. The majority of the employers who are actually our members do comply in terms of payment. Now, the issue is at negotiation, where we are now. It's at the issue of them negotiating the 16% and now coming to cry wolf. I mean, you have the same unions who are here who have then exempted certain companies from paying the 7.5% of the Provident Fund. How did they come to that? I mean, they are saying, no, they have certain employers who are exploiting workers, but they themselves then subject workers to exploitation by exempting certain employers. What was the mechanisms that they used to determine who to exempt and who not to exempt amongst themselves?
Let's ask them, Jack, why are certain employers exempted?
But I can say this without any contradiction. No union that is mandatory driven, that its interest is to serve the interest of its members and to uplift their living standards, will agree that the employer should be exempted. Once more again, I think we need to put this into a better context, is that the very same Provident Fund that my colleague is talking about is a legal requirement that each and every employer must comply with the Provident Fund. So there is no union within the bargaining council who are sleeping in the same bed and giving the employers an exemption to comply with the Provident Fund. But the other issue that I also need to clarify to my colleague the definition of 50+1 representation, it means that both the employer and the union. Now, let's do this mathematically. If the employer is having 45% members who are the employers within the industry, and the union is having 30% of that, it means that is 50+1. We don't have to be equal. So therefore, legally, we are obligated to establish the bargaining council. Lastly, this bargaining council, the union has been fought for it since from the strike of 2006. We've been working so hard up to date, up until when the employers see the need to establish the bargaining council. And we are very happy about the bargaining council, and we know for sure that the bargaining council will do a good job in making sure that the employers do comply. Thank you.
Well, I mean, this is actually very interesting, but we have run out of time. Praisewell, you, as Labour representatives, you are meeting on Sunday to prepare for a meeting with the employers on Monday. What should we, or what can we expect?
Yeah, I think on our side, our members will direct us in terms of to say what is the way forward. But also, we want to mention that we are not threatening the industry, that we want to go on action. Actually, we will go on action as and when the employers, they are not responding. So this is not a threat. Actually, it's a fact. But our members will give us the direction, and we will make sure that we will communicate that at a good point.
Well, let's leave it there for tonight. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Lebonare, who is the Deputy President of the Association of Private Security Owners of South Africa, TAPSOSA. We also had Jet Mazibuko, General Secretary of SATAU, Praisewell Nsibande, who is the national organizer of DETAU. Both of them, of course, were unfortunately load-shared, and that's why we had to take them on the telephone and not on Zoom as we had planned to. Up next, we look at President Cyril Ramaphosa's tough, frank talk to the country's mayors. Real state capture is actually happening at municipalities. Well, that's the view of President Cyril Ramaphosa, who yesterday addressed the country's mayors. The speech was frank and tough. But was anyone listening? Do the people leading our municipalities even care? Well, take a listen to how the president outlined the challenges facing the country's municipalities.
Poor governance, which is given rise to by instability, by the continuous changing of political leadership. You often hear of the instability of mayors being changed on an ongoing basis. Other problem, of course, is financial management and controls. It is quite disturbing when one hears the Auditor General saying they have found that payments are made without any form of record, without any form of invoice, without any form of demonstration who the money is going to, and millions just disappear. Now, that should not be happening, particularly within our democratic system. Another problem, of course, is lack of proper planning and, of course, revenue collection. I think every mayor, every council should be seized with this process of revenue collection, because essentially the residents should be our customers. And as we know, customers come first. Customers have to be satisfied with the service that we give them because they pay for that service. So it is when they are satisfied that we will then be able to get good revenue from them. But we also need to set in place good revenue collection processes and make sure that our revenue collection is between 80 and 100%.
question, I guess, is what does the head of state expect these mayors to actually do now that he has outlined the challenges facing them? Take a listen to what he had to say around what the government expects of them.
Mayors and executive mayors, as political heads, should be at the forefront to do a number of things. Firstly, they have to provide community-wide leadership and vision by putting forward a clear vision for the local area, building coalitions of common interests, and encouraging the development of a vibrant civil society. Being able to manage the diverse interests in our municipalities, interfacing with all stakeholders, be it traditional leaders, be it sporting organizations, be it religious organizations, be it educational organizations, and what have you. And secondly is to continue building its capacity to make policy judgments. Local political leaders should actively strengthen their ability to make policy judgments through deepening their own understanding of the dynamics of the local area, anticipating changes and learning from past practices. The third issue, of course, is to be accountable and transparent, and this requires political leadership, which creates opportunities to account to the community, to increase accountability, ensures that the actions of the council reflect the aspirations of the community, increases the legitimacy of the council, and deepens local democracy. And in this regard, all that the mayor and various councillors have to do is just to keep the community well informed about the issues that you are dealing with, to constantly be interfacing with them. And as one goes around the country, we often hear communities saying, meetings never take place here. We never know what the municipality is doing. And the magic with being connected with communities means that even as you do not have the budget, the money to either build the road, to even close the potholes, to do whatever needs to be done, that transparency of being able to go to our people and explaining to them your budgetary constraints and what your plan and vision is in terms of executing some of your plans and the time frame. Once that is done, I've often found that our people are quite understanding. When we don't do that, that is when they protest. That is when they get into the streets, because they have a sense that nothing is being done. So it is therefore important to build partnerships and build sustainable and durable relationships with our people, because meeting the needs and aspirations of our people requires political leadership and the ability to interface with all sectors. We need to represent the diversity of interests. Municipalities should take active steps to ensure that representatives from groups which tend to be marginalized are encouraged to participate. And we need to demonstrate that there can be value for money.
President Cyril Ramaphosa there addressing the country's mayors at a summit that was held yesterday. We were scheduled to speak to the president of the South African Local Government Association, Mr. Bheki Stofile. Unfortunately, something went wrong. We don't know whether he too, like our other guests, was affected by load shedding, but we can't get hold of him anymore. We're going to end the show with this. The British British King Charles III has paid a moving tribute to her mother, the late Queen Elizabeth II. He has thanked the late monarch for steering Britain and the Commonwealth into a better position. Queen Elizabeth II passed away yesterday at the age of 96. The new monarch was well received by mourners who came in their numbers to honor the Queen at their Buckingham Palace. King Charles says the late Queen served with absolute dedication.
I pay tribute to my mother's memory, and I honor her life of service. I know that her death brings great sadness to so many of you, and I share that sense of loss beyond measure with you all. When the Queen came to the throne, Britain and the world were still coping with the privations and aftermath of the Second World War, and still living by the conventions of earlier times. In the course of the last 70 years, we have seen our society become one of many cultures and many faiths. The institutions of the state have changed in turn. But through all changes and challenges, our nation and the wider family of realms, of whose talents, traditions, and achievements I am so inexpressibly proud, have prospered and flourished. Our values have remained and must remain constant. The role and the duties of monarchy also remain, as does the sovereign's particular relationship and responsibility towards the Church of England, the church in which my own faith is so deeply rooted. In that faith and the values it inspires, I have been brought up to cherish a sense of duty to others and to hold in the greatest respect the precious traditions, freedoms, and responsibilities of our unique history and our system of parliamentary government. As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation.
And that's our show for tonight. Do join us again on Monday when we'll be paying tribute to the late and great Steve Bantu Biko. Have a good night and a great weekend.